Bonnie. Okay. All right, I'm going to check for quorum really quick here. Let's see. No. Okay. Megan, do you think we should just start? Okay. So, hello, everybody. Thank you for coming to the housing meeting. We currently do not have a chairperson or a quorum. So, I'm going to run through the agenda today. And before we do that, I'll just introduce everybody that's on the call. And I'm switching between screens here, so bear with me. From Chester, I see Pat Bands and Bonnie Bennett. Pat, thank you for joining. I know you're not feeling very well, so Pat probably won't be talking today. From Clinton, Abby Pearsall. Deep River, Daniel Smith. Essex, Carrie Duquez. Killingworth, Richard Planus. I see from Middlefield, Jim Irish. And Westbrook, Eric Salmon. Oh, David Lum is joining us from Lyme. And I see Carol Jones from Deep River. And I think that is the members, excuse me. So welcome to Julia McGrath and Julie Way from Congressman Courtney's office. Thank you for joining us. I see Rebecca Auger from OPM and Ben Lovejoy from Department of Housing. Thank you both for joining us. I also see Maya Bruno, who's a student at Connecticut College, who is joining us. She's interested in learning more about housing. From RiverCog, there's Sam Gold. He's going to be in and out of this meeting. Kevin Armstrong. I'm Eliza Lopresti, Megan Juflas, Susie Beckman, Marcos Gonzalez. And who am I missing? Anyone?
Did you get Kevin?
Sure. Okay. I did see Kevin. Okay, so because we don't have a quorum, I'm just going to run through the agenda really quick. We're not going to do the approval of the minutes, which was the first thing on the agenda, which I don't know if everybody heard. We were talking earlier that we do not have a chairperson right now. So Michael has resigned from the committee, and Pat, our vice chair, has no voice. So that is why I'm doing this.
Literally no voice.
Literally no voice. It's the worst. So I guess we'll just go right into the RHNA update. And Megan, I don't know if I made you. Nope, you should be able to share your screen. So Megan's going to give a little bit of an update on the regional housing needs assessment and where we're at with that.
Okay, great. Let me just make sure I do the right screen here. All right, and I'm going to minimize that. Okay, is everybody seeing the presentation and not my notes slides?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So I'm going to run through a recap and some next steps with all the work that we've been doing on the regional housing needs assessment. I know we all kind of feel like we have brain damage, at least I'll speak for myself. I know I do, from all of the work that we've done over the last year. So we're not going to be doing any more of that today, but we are just going to kind of summarize where we've been and where we're going. So for the last year, the Regional Housing Committee has been working together on the Regional Housing Needs Assessment. Why? Why are we putting ourselves through all of this torture? So it goes back to the Regional Housing Plan, which we adopted in 2022. And as part of that plan, we created what we called the baseline assessment in our region using 2022 decennial census data. And we examined the housing supply that we had, the demographic trends that we were seeing, and also the economic conditions that were in the region at the time. And one of the important things that we noted is that each of these things really feeds into each other. And so changes to one are going to change the other two. Some key findings of that plan, just to recap, these shouldn't be new to us, but it's important to remind ourselves. The key findings from the plan are that our region's population is aging and also declining, and we're losing and not replacing our young people. New housing construction in the region has been very limited, and our current housing stock skews towards older, larger single-family houses on larger lots, and there are very limited rental and multifamily options. Job growth in the region, as well as in the state, has been relatively slow. And in our region, we know that businesses are struggling to attract and retain workers. And the cost of housing, along with maintenance and commute costs, is not affordable to a significant portion of our population, especially those who currently work or would otherwise work in the region. And I just want to call out the graphic on the left side of the slide there. 37,000 of our workforce commute into the region from elsewhere, and 54,000 and change commute from our region out to other places.
Oh, our guy
So there is
is here.
there is a loss that we're having of population that we could have in the region. We also found that the existing housing stock that we have isn't really likely to attract or retain the younger population that the region needs in order to fuel job growth and job creation. And in general, we need to increase our supply of smaller, more modern, more affordable units, and we need to really strategically deploy those in order to mitigate or reverse, in a best case, the troubling trends that we're starting to see across the region. We had 6 foundational objectives that we identified in the regional housing plan that are meant to inform how our region plans for housing in the future. So I'm just going to read through these. 1, diversify the region's population in terms of age, race, and socioeconomic status. 2, create a resilient workforce in the region. 3, ensure that people who work in the region can live close to their jobs. 4, diversify housing stock for a variety of households. 5, examine ways to make the existing housing stock, office, and retail space in the region functional for a changing population. And 6, encourage orderly creation of housing of different styles and types throughout the region near existing areas of development, employment, and transit. So that's great to know. That's how we want to plan for housing, but we need to understand how much housing we need. We understand that private developers are going to be primarily responsible for creating additional housing in the region. And so the market is generally going to control what gets built. As part of our regional housing plan, Goman and York, and specifically Don Poland, who came and spoke to us a few times, analyzed historic development trends in the region to understand how much housing our region could realistically be expected to absorb over time. And that analysis concluded that just based on past market conditions, about 200 units per year over 10 years, or 2,000 units total in that time, was sort of the status quo realistic estimate with no change. And we noted, again, the importance of strategically planning for these 200 units per year or 2,000 units in a way that can sort of generate more interest and turn around the market trends over time. There were some significant limitations to this estimate, though, and we knew that at the time. We knew it was something that we wanted to be able to build on, because what we did was we analyzed demographics, jobs, and housing supply in our baseline assessment, and we also established a target number of units for the next 10 years based solely on the market. But what we didn't do was sufficiently link those two pieces together. And we needed to create a better understanding of that unit distribution across our municipalities so that we could plan at the regional and town level. Why does that matter? Because markets are going to control the construction or redevelopment of units, but towns control land use decisions like planning and zoning. And there are going to be levers that the towns can pull to incentivize different types of development. So planning for different housing types, for example, in the POCD, and zoning land use appropriately by creating regulations that make it easy to build what it is that we want to see, and even sometimes marketing opportunities, letting developers know that your town is open for business can facilitate the development that we want to see if we're strategic about it. But the choices that towns are going to make in pulling those levers are going to look different if your need is 15 units versus a need of 50 units versus a need of 150 units. And we need to understand what that difference is in order to right size the approach and strategies. So that brings us to this last year. We've been working on the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, or RHNA, RHNA. We began the process in January. We did tons of best practices reading assignments. We did the 3 workshops, the first on our case studies, the second on important inputs, and the third on what data we wanted to use, as well as 1 working group meeting, which Don Poland helped us facilitate. And our goal at the start of this process was to finish by December, and here we are. So just a quick reminder that there are 3 common steps in RHNA process. The first is a determination of how many units we need. The second is allocation, or who gets them. And the third is accommodation, which is all at the local level, planning for how these units fit into the fabric of the community. So for us, we established 4 basic determination inputs. The first one was population, or the number of people we currently have in the region per the latest census, plus the number of people we expect to have in the future. The second being household size, or the number of people expected to live in each unit. And we ended up applying a different number for current household size and future projected household size. The third is existing units, or the number of units we already have that are available for those households. And then finally, vacancy, or otherwise you could think of it as that healthy slack that provides mobility for people to change houses in the market. And here is what that model looks like. So current population divided by household size gives us current households, plus future population over future household size gives us future households. Subtract from that the existing units, add to that our flex for vacancy. And we've been looking at this using 2020 data. And I just put this up in this way because I wanted to reiterate that this is a test. So 2020 data is old now, but we wanted to see if this made sense when we started plugging numbers into it and make sure that we weren't getting really wacky results. So when we plug those things in, we ended up with a total of 2,222 units over 10 years, which is remarkably close to what the market prediction was in our regional housing plan. Moving on for allocation. So once you have your total number of units that you need, we split them up into 3 main categories to distribute across the region with an equity adjustment at the end. So the first was a 50% weight for population. And this was originally a proportional share of population growth. But what we found when we started plugging numbers in is that a lot of our municipalities are actually seeing population decline, and this results in a negative allocation. So we changed this to existing share of population per the latest census. And then this became sort of an equalizer because it recognized that every municipality needed some housing, usually because of household formation or shrinking households or vacant jobs. And so we wanted this weighted at 50% to make sure that everyone was getting something. The second was jobs. A large focus of our plan of conservation and development and also our housing plan was that synergy between housing and jobs. So we proposed creating housing near jobs to provide opportunities for employees to live where they work, as well as to allow employers to attract employees. Our Regional Economic Development Committee has also expressed a substantial challenge in getting and keeping employees, a lot of that to do with housing cost, housing type, or the commute distance. So we used loads data, which is census data, to determine each town's regional share of jobs as a percentage of the total jobs in the region. And we applied that percentage to the determination number. And we weighted this at 40% of the total. And then lastly, transit. Our region doesn't have a robust transit system. We don't have rapid transit, but we do have 3 Shoreline East stations, and we have a large bus passenger terminal in Middletown, and we're currently planning transit-oriented development around all of those places. And just based on our policy considerations, providing housing near transit is an important goal. So we only weighted this one at 10%, and we divided that 10% based on the walkability radius around each transit station. I wanted to note with the weighting of these, the 50, 40, and 10, we found that putting too much emphasis on jobs in transit put too much emphasis of housing on the same handful of municipalities. We were basically doubling and tripling down, and a lot of the other municipalities were not seeing any housing. So this particular breakdown balance seemed to produce a result that, when mapped, matched most closely with our vision map from our housing plan and plan of conservation and development. And then the last thing on here is equity. We have talked about breaking out the allocation inputs into area median income categories 120, 80, 50, and 30, and then comparing that at each town to the regional average. We were using CHAS data out of HUD for that. And what would happen is within the town's allocation number, the share of each AMI category would be adjusted up or down depending on whether that town had more than the regional average or less than the regional average of housing in each of those categories. So it would result in greater distribution of opportunity at different income categories, but it wouldn't be so much that it's forcing relocation of low-income households to different areas. And this is sort of what the model looks like. This should look familiar. Population, transit, jobs. You may recall jobs was originally jobs, and then it became activity centers to match with the POCD. But then when we mapped activity centers, it was too complicated and the data got a little muddy. So we put it back to jobs again, something that we might revisit in the future. And so when we plug all of these things in, again, testing the model using 2020 data, this is what it shakes out at. And with a rounding error, I will point out, because I know someone will if I don't, we ended up with 2,221 units instead of 22. It is something to do with the rounding in Excel, and we could find that missing unit. But for the purposes of conversation, this is generally speaking what it breaks down at. And I don't want to spend too much time on this slide because I want to focus on what those numbers mean. And this has been a lot of conversation coming out of this group since we first saw allocation numbers. So what does this mean? Although we are making a region-wide growth projection, each town would be preparing for different levels of growth based on those allocation factors. So your population share, the number of jobs you have, and whether or not you have one of those transit stations. Middletown is probably going to be looking at the largest amount of growth, and Lyme is probably going to be looking at the least, and everyone else is going to fall somewhere in the middle. And if you look at the map on the right-hand side of the slide, this is our POCD future land use map and also the map that we used in our housing plan. And it kind of matches up with that. You're seeing the colors in the yellow and the purple as the highest concentrations of housing and jobs in the region. And those, if you look back and compare, are the municipalities that see the larger allocation numbers. So it makes sense. And understanding this, again, allows towns to right-size planning approaches and better understand the scale of development. So for example, I'm going to pick on Deep River because I know they'll be a good sport. But looking at Deep River's 2020 allocation, based on all those models that we just did, they're looking at 46 units over 10 years. The market is going to ultimately determine whether those 46 units are ever actually built on the ground. But the town has some options. The town can look at their land use plan and look at locations where more housing is desirable. Where do you want to see it built? They can then, on those areas, revise zoning regulations to allow more housing there. This might look something like an adaptive reuse regulation that allows commercial or industrial structures to convert into multifamily. And even if that's only 15 units total, hold that there. Look at an area of residential. If they're single family residential, maybe change the zoning regulations and say these should be allowed to be duplexes. If that covers 40 lots, you're netting 20 units there. And then you could look at maybe a regulation that allows the conversion of single family housing units into 3 units. And even if that only covers 8 lots, you're looking at 16 units. So there you're over your 46. So some final points. This whole exercise, it's a planning tool, and the purpose of it is to help us as planners, as people who are thinking about housing and how to plan for and create housing in our municipalities, to make long-term decisions and to be less reactive to development proposals as they arise. Some things this is not. It's not a requirement for anyone to build anything on the ground. Technically, it's just an exercise. It's not a requirement for anyone to do anything at all. It's not a mandate on how towns have to plan for their units. That is town decision. And it's not an extension of or really any relation to 830G or a 10% of anything. It's really just looking at how do we make our housing market healthier. So next steps, what we're looking at, we'd like to take these efforts and share them with our board. What we would like from them is to allow us to use this methodology when we're doing our update to our regional housing plan. So we as a group would revisit this when it's time to work on the regional housing plan update and also the 830J plan updates. Those for us are due in 2027. So we'll expect to start that process in mid to late 2025 because these things take a lot of time. And then we can reference that awesome tool that Kevin created for us with the drop-down menus, reference the calculator, reference the outcomes for this as we go into the future, talking about toolkit items and template regulations and development projects that are coming up. We can talk about how all of those things fit in with what we're looking at in the calculator. And also we will continue to provide updates on the state housing needs assessment study and progress as we learn more about that. And just in conclusion, this has been a very long year with a lot of work from all of you. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank you all for hanging in there, for all of your work and your dedication to this process. And now we can get back to our regularly scheduled programming.
Thank you, Megan. That was great. Does anybody have any questions for Megan or about the process? I know someone has questions. Don't be shy.
That was perfect. There's nothing else. There's nothing to say.
No one. Okay. Yeah. So do we need to do anything? Do we need to talk further about how we're bringing this to the board, Megan, or?
I mean, I guess if everyone generally feels comfortable with that, I would just take a pulse check. Does everyone feel generally comfortable with that?
And we do almost have quorum. We're still one person shy, but I was watching you all come in. So we're still not there. We can't really vote on it, but we would love to hear a consensus if you think it would be a good idea for us to bring this to the board. If you could raise your hand or give a little yay. I don't know how you want to do it over Zoom.
All right.
David, we will bring it before you.
I got it. Yeah, from Thomas. Yeah, from Kathy. Thanks,
Jim, I
Pat.
see you turning your camera on. Are you giving a thumbs up? Yep. Okay, great. So I see that a lot of our members that are also our COG board members are in favor of hearing more about this. So that's good.
Great.
Yeah. So one more time, any questions, statements, anything about the RHNA before we move on to the next thing? No. Okay, so the next thing on the agenda is the dates and times of this meeting. And we realized by talking to the people that are actually here that it kind of assumes that you're good with this date and time, but we had noticed that we were losing people throughout the year. We haven't had quorum in about 4 meetings. So we were wondering, one, if it was like all the RHNA work, and 2, if it was actually the date and the time of the meeting that was becoming inconvenient for people. So we are, I did email that question out. I didn't hear from anybody. So I have created a draft version of what 2025 meeting schedules would look like with the 4th Tuesday at 2 p.m. But if anybody has any other suggestions or a better date and time for this meeting, you could speak up now or send me an email. We're happy to be flexible with it if it would get more people to the meetings. We do have a couple things to follow up with after this meeting, so that we will email that out to reach the people that aren't here, who are probably the people that have a harder time with the date and time of the meeting. And I will also send those draft dates out, and maybe we can get a quorum vote via email on that so we can get them in the books for 2025. Okay, good. All right. So the next thing that we wanted to talk about under the heading of other, there's a couple things. Number one, we did lose our chair. Michael, sent an email to Sam that he basically needed to resign because he has a lot of time constraints. So we are looking for someone to perform chair duties, which is basically at this point, just running the agenda and running the meetings. Megan and I and our other RiverCog staff are happy to do like 99% of the work and just have the chair be the approver and run the meetings. So if anyone wants to volunteer, again, you can speak up now or send me an email.
Chair.
You want to be chair, Richard? I think Richard just volunteered to be chair.
We are very fun to work with.
Yes. Yeah, we try to be. So that we're just putting that out there. We are looking for a chair. The rest of the officers, our officers' terms are 3 years. So everybody else should be all set. So that's that. And then the last thing under other that we wanted to talk about, and we did this last December, was this group's priorities for what you would like to see for 2025. And I don't know if a few of you might have seen the infographic that I had emailed out which basically we looked back at what the stated priorities were for 2024 and kind of like pointed out some of the things that we were able to get to and things that we were able to work on. So moving forward, we would like to work towards what this group wants to work towards. So we really would like to know what you're hoping to get out of the Regional Housing Committee and how can we facilitate that. So again, we're like completely open to having a good conversation right now and or put it in the chat and or send me an email. Some of the things we were talking about internally were some of the things that we had wanted to do for 2024 but hadn't really gotten to yet, which was like real creation of some of those model regulations that we had talked about. We have an internal team that's working more on the data dashboard. Right now, we're working on the housing market indicators and the housing characteristics. So that should be coming up online shortly. We did just get the latest census information at the end of last week, was just released. So we're hoping to be able to incorporate that as well shortly. But we want to know what else that you would all like to work on. Thomas, Daniel, Eric, anyone?
I was
Bonnie?
thinking, actually, as you were working on the regional housing needs assessment, that really what we need in our region is some education of the, and I think that the model regulations are a great part of this, but also beginning to engage the public on the work that we've done. I think, Megan, you mentioned, first of all, amazing job that you guys have done. But I just think part of it is I don't want it to be shelved. And I think, as I mentioned last time, it's the just a discussion and some of the basic understanding that you have gained and have shared with all of us. It will be lost, I think, and will not make any progress at all unless we begin to think about how we inform the public and each of our towns, our citizens and residents of what we are thinking of and why we came up with these ideas. Now, I think you have to go to your board, but I also think ultimately that is that's my next goal in addition to your model regulations, which fit hand in glove.
Yeah, and that's something we talk about a lot and we know is at the forefront for sure. So maybe we can all as a group look at how we bring that to fruition in 2025 and make that a reality. Anyone else?
No.
No? Oh, cool.
Thank you.
Oh, Thomas cannot unmute. Let me see if I can. I can ask you to unmute, but I don't think I can unmute you. I don't know, Thomas, I'm sorry. Maybe you can write it in the chat. Jim or Carol? Pat, maybe you have something you want to type in the chat. Sorry. Well,
One thing that we were thinking about, sorry, Eliza.
No, go ahead.
One thing we were thinking about doing in a follow-up is kind of sending out a really quick Survey Monkey that's just, a list of items that we might do in the next year and let you select your top 3 choices or maybe rank them. We haven't made the survey yet, so one of those 2 options, depending on how difficult it is to do, so that we can see from you what the priorities are. But anything that you say right now will definitely be on that selection list.
And I see Ben Lovejoy in the chat saying how the state DOH could further assist. Ben, is that public education piece something that you might be able to help us as a committee with, or are you like working specifically with only town by town?
The commissioner, hey everyone, also great job as always. The commissioner always asks me what you all are thinking and what you're doing when I'm interacting with you. She knows that I attend these meetings along with any, with other regional efforts, including the SCROG one. I think it's worth having a conversation about ways that we might be able to provide public education. I can tell you that we engage with NVCOG quite frequently. We're rolling into our third regional presentation with them next month. We recently did one with 830G, and then previous to that, I believe we did one concerning incentive housing zones. So we're available as an agency. I think the public education component is big. I know that I spoke with Chester last week concerning public education and ways that the agency could help. And sort of my response to that was, sure, we can talk on a one-to-one level at Chester, but a lot of this information is uniform from Chester to a Deep River or Chester to an Essex. When it comes to the demographic data, when it comes to talking about this sort of stuff, it's in my opinion, very inefficient to do it on a one town by town basis. Public participation models, public education models that are designed specifically for like a local project, that's totally different. But if we're talking about the nuts and bolts of this stuff, and trying to bring that information to the forefront of a community, in many ways, a lot of this information is uniform from town to town. So be creative. I told Chester to talk to you all about whether there might be something that's on the table as far as a regional model. And obviously Rebecca's on here from OPM, so I don't want to speak for their agency, but I can, I know that they've empowered the COGS and are looking at things from a regional standpoint. At least that's the way that the legislation seems to be headed. So we're here to help in any way, but again, be creative and think about these things, and let me know if there's anything that I can help with.
Thank you. So one of the things that we had talked about was like perhaps having some sort of a video library. Sorry, Kevin, if we didn't talk to you about that, but I think we did.
A microphone that we can use.
Yes, that's right. And I'm thinking like maybe that could be something where you could help Ben, where we could kind of create videos that not necessarily to be used for the committee, but that towns could like show to their public, explaining things. So that's one of the things on my long list of things.
Yeah. Again,
never ending.
If you have ideas, if there's ways that we can empower you all to do stuff more, please bring them up. We want to hear from you. So, would we necessarily be making them? Probably not. You know what I mean? Like that's the videos themselves or whatever. But if there's ways that you want to get creative or you want to think about this through the lens of the technical assistance program that I'm currently managing, I mean, we are moldable. It is evolving. It's always changing. And so I think big. If you have concepts on the table about creating, a series of videos and need support on that, please come up with these ideas and reach out to me so that we can go further from there.
Thank you. And I'm just looking in the chat right now, and it seems we have a couple people agreeing with the public education piece of it, and more tools that zoning boards can use to encourage housing. Pat, I know I don't want to ask you a lot of questions because I know you have to type, but are we talking there about model regulations and or best practices, or maybe something more specific? Thomas says develop more sources of housing data for the region and for rural areas. WRT demographics. I don't know what that means. Anyone? No. For low, moderate. Oh, with respect to, got it. Low, moderate income, and develop a partnership with UConn Center for Real Estate, perhaps summer interns working with the COG or doing graduate research for credit, and to develop data that's not available now. Yeah, that's a good one. We are finding a lot of good data. Some of it may not currently be in our budget, but it's out there. So I think I've been delving into this data dashboard project that really others had already started and been working on. I've been really pleasantly surprised by what we've been able to access so far. and we're getting more into it as we go. And so, yes, Pat's saying yes, model regulations, best practices that we can bring to zoning boards. Okay, these are all great. And I'm writing these all down, and they're going to be in the official list for next year.
And I will also say, although some of the data may not currently be within our budget to get, if everybody wants the data, we might be able to make it part of our budget to get.
Yeah, that's an evolving conversation for sure.
One comment is about the snapshot that you guys put together. I printed out, which I thought was very well done. I'd love to share this with the Planning and Zoning Commission in Essex. So maybe just having even more snapshots or kind of breaking these into their own individual flyers. I mean, that's kind of a lot of flyers, but I just thought that this was a great tool that I'd like to share with our local commission anyway.
Okay. And I don't know if you all noticed or realized this because of the way it was formatted, but the things that are underlined in that are clickable links that go to whatever that item is. Okay. Anybody else? And as you all, I hope as you all know that, you know, Megan and I are always welcoming ideas and emails. Like, it's not like say it now or forever hold your peace. So hopefully, yes, we can share. Pat is asking, can we share that latest RENA PowerPoint? And we will do that. Yeah, we'll send an email hopefully later this week with a bunch of the items that we're talking about, and we'll include that as well. Okay. What else, guys? We're still in other. Anybody have anything that they'd like to talk about for the good of the group? Options for grants for local governments. Yes. Yep. We are continuing to track those on our grants spreadsheet, which has whatever we hear of, which, you know, if Julia, I want to give a shout out to Julia and Congressman Courtney's office, because she has been probably the biggest help and lifesaver when it comes to anything grant related in our region. You're amazing. Thank you. We appreciate you.
I would recommend applying for anything that you identify within the next fiscal year. But I'm also happy to pull together some examples of programs that might be helpful.
Thank you. We appreciate that. We'll always take that. And just so you all know, for the upcoming legislative session, Susie and I are going to be tracking legislation that is relevant to our municipalities. And one of the topics that we're obviously going to be looking heavily at is housing. So stay tuned for updates on that as the session gets into swing. Anybody else? Megan?
I really am willing to put together cookie goodie bags for you all if you would like to come and pick them up. I don't want to deprive you.
Let's talk about what kind of cookies that you may have made.
There are several varieties. Let's see. What did I have? I had black and white chocolate chip, chewy ginger cookies. I had Oreo truffle cookies. I have pumpkin with like a maple-y frosting cookie, and a sugar cookie.
And I have a Mexican hot chocolate. It has a little bit of cayenne pepper in it, and a pistachio and an almond melt away. So,
Thanks,
Ben,
Dad.
come see us on Thursday.
So I will bring them into the office, and if anybody does feel like stopping by, I will put together a goodie bag.
Yeah, I will too, but I won't be there till Thursday. So come over on Thursday. Come see us. Also, since we're talking about Thursday, I'm going to just give a quick shout out to the Land Trust annual meeting is happening on Thursday evening. If anybody would like to come, Ben Sperry from the U.S. Army Corps is going to be giving a presentation on hydrilla in the river and in the waterways in our region. So we will be having dinner in person, and you also may attend via Zoom. So if anybody would like to attend, let me know, and I'll get you the information.
What time is that gonna be?
Dinner is at 5:30. Meeting starts at 6.
Okay.
Okay. If no one has anything else, then I think we can do our adjournment of the meeting that was never officially called to order. And again, be on the lookout for an email with information and some questions, and we'd be really appreciative if you would answer them for us so we can have more information from you.
Yeah, we want to be able to provide you guys with everything that you need. That's what's going to make this a success. That's what we're here for. And I just, again, want to say I appreciate you all so much for hanging tough while we ran through that RENA process. I know it was a slog, but we made it. And so thank you. Right.
This was our shortest meeting yet.
I know.
Thank you for joining us. And those of you that are not on the committee, I hope you continue to attend our meetings. We would love to see you every time. We really appreciate all your input. And of course, to the committee members, your input is invaluable.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Yeah. Happy New Year and Merry Christmas. And oh my gosh, we'll see you in January. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.